we're talking about belts and how such a simple piece of equipment can help you from both the standpoint of safety and improving the safety of your big lifts, but also how such a simple piece of equipment can also benefit you from a performance standpoint and the actual mechanisms behind why a belt helps you lift more weight. So I think for this, we need to go to the whiteboard and just run over intra-abdominal pressure again, which I've done in one of our previous videos, breathing and bracing, which I might link in the description below, but I might just run you over this again. So here we have Augustos, and Augustos wants to learn how to breathe and brace correctly. We have talked about this before, but it is so important that it's important to reiterate the points that in order to safely load the spine and the body, particularly through our barbell lifts, our heavy barbell lifts, deadlift and squatting, it is important to understand how to breathe and brace correctly. And this is the first point in understanding how a belt actually improves our lifting. So here we have Augustos. Underneath his rib cage, we have a diaphragm. So this diaphragm sits underneath the rib cage and it encapsulates the entire undersurface underneath all of the ribs. And then on the bottom, we have his pelvis where we have the pelvic floor. So again, I'm just going to draw the pelvic floor here in blue. So here we can see how we've got two opposing sort of structures. We have the diaphragm up top and the pelvic floor down below. What happens is when you breathe in nice and deep, so when air comes into the lungs, the diaphragm draws down. And when the diaphragm draws down, it closes off the space that is inside this abdomen. Hence, pressure is then created, and that pressure is what pushes out against the abdomen wall, so the entire way around. So it's also called, sometimes you hear the terms 360-degree breathing, when you breathe in deep, and you push pressure against your entire abdomen all the way around. So it's 360-degree breathing. We here like to call it circumferential breathing. So you're breathing in the entire circumference of your abdomen all the way around. So this is what intra-abdominal pressure is. And this is how the system, our body, actually creates this pressure to stabilize the lower back as a result of this pressure that is pushing out against the abdomen wall with a big deep breath in and a diaphragmatic contraction on the way down. So how does an actual belt improve this? So what happens is if you then take a really thick piece of leather, as you can see here, it's quite a thick piece of leather, it's very rigid, particularly this SBD belt here. It's quite an expensive belt, but I believe it's one of the best on the market. When you take a very rigid piece of leather and place it around this ab wall, all the way around, you can see how this very thick piece of leather, when it is tightened around the abdomen and this pressure begins to push out against the ab wall, that it almost doubles up the amount of pressure that can be built inside the abdomen, the amount of intra-abdominal pressure. So this is how a belt actually can help create greater levels of core stability, which in turn can help us transfer force through the core, through the midsection into the barbell, which is what I'll go over now. So now that we understand how the belt actually improves our core stability by increasing the amount of pressure that we can build in our abdomen, it's important now to understand how the belt actually helps and improve the safety of our lift as number one, because safety always comes first and safety never takes a holiday. And number two, how it can actually improve the performance of the lift themselves. So when we create pressure in our abdomen, we create what is known as core stability. So all that is that the core, or pretty much our entire torso, becomes very stable and rigid, especially when you add in a nice thick belt like this. This rigid, stable core allows force to be transferred from the floor, which is where we get all force from, through our body and then into the barbell. So when you think about a nice big heavy squat, the barbell resting across our back, we need to apply force into that barbell in order to move it. So we need to be able to control the bar down as gravity pulls on it, but then we need to apply more force on the barbell than gravity is applying to it in order to move it back up and complete the squat. So we need to get that force out of the ground, and the way we do that is by pushing our legs into the floor. Now, if you think about having a floppy or non-rigid core, as we go to push into the floor, that force would try and transfer through our body, but if we're squirming and we're losing shape and all that sort of stuff, that force is dissipating and we're losing the force and it's not moving up into the barbell and ultimately lifting the bar. Instead, it's just changing our position. So this is how core stability actually works. As you go to press into the floor, that force can transfer through your body, through a rigid, stable core, and then into the barbell. And the more force we can move into the barbell, the stronger you'll ultimately be. So that is actually how core stability works first. So the second way in which utilizing a belt will improve our lift performance itself is because the added stability that comes from a core provides a better foundation for our hips to work off. And because our hips gain stability from the core itself. So with a very tight and rigid, stable midsection, accompanied by a nice rigid belt, it allows our hips to apply better force production because it has a stable base to work on. So that's number two. So then comes the question, who is actually allowed to utilize a lifting belt? For me, there is no hurdle requirement to use a belt. If you're someone that takes your training seriously and really wants to get the most out of some of your heavy lifts safely, I believe a belt is a fantastic tool to use. However, I will preface that by saying this, that if you are unable to breathe and brace correctly and unable to create pressure inside your abdomen without the use of a belt, I do believe that this is a skill that you're probably best to learn before trying to use a belt with your lifting. Understanding how to brace correctly and to transfer force through a strong, stable core, like I've already explained, is a critical skill to have if you want to take your strength training to the next level. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If I managed to help you out or answer any previous questions that you had, make sure you like this video. Please subscribe to the channel for new content weekly. You can find us in our social links in the description box below or reach us at our website, www.melbournestrengthculture.com. Thank you for watching, happy lifting, and welcome to the culture.